Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about palettes that I love except it's everything that it should be except for one little detail. And if you're interested in seeing what those palettes might be, then I hope you'll stick around. I filmed today's eye look. I will link it down below for you as soon as it's live. And if you haven't been here before, my name is Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love to play with colorful eyeshadow, and I upload at least 3 videos a week, all kinds of eyeshadow related content. So I hope you will consider liking and subscribing, and without further ado, let's talk about these palettes. The first palette that I'm going to talk about is the Mimosa palette from BH Cosmetics Brunch series. Now, when I first came onto the eyeshadow scene, BH Cosmetics had recently perfected their formula. Like, they had figured it out and they were killing it with all these amazing releases. The Brunch series was one such collection. I had Avocado Toast for a while, I have Mimosa, and I really like this palette. I think it's a very pretty pink, orangey kind of eyeshadow palette. There are some peachy tones, some corals, this lovely pop of white, a bright yellow, bright orange, bright cattleya kind of color, a few neutrals over here, and then lots of lovely shimmers. I like this palette a lot. In fact, now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, ooh, what could I do with that? I haven't played with it in a while, but it's great formula and it's a really pretty presentation. I like the idea, the theme, it's lovely, but it doesn't have any deepening shades. This is the deepest shade, and it's really a mid-toned shade. It's not very deep. This palette really would have benefited from a dark brown or a dark pink or even a dark red that would have worked nicely with the pinks and the orange and the yellow. Any of these colors would have been really good deepening shades and made this palette the complete package: light, dark, mid-tone, shimmer, matte, everything that you would have wanted. As it is, my eyeshadow aesthetic is definitely to have some depth, and so I'm happy to use this palette, but I almost always reach into another one to get a deeper shade. So I love it, but now let's talk about the Ace Beauté Paradise Fallen palette. This is a nice palette, lots of beautiful cool tone purple shades, but it's not monochromatic. And obviously we have this whole row of purples on the bottom, but then we've got sort of a dove gray matte here, we've got a silver shimmer, a brownish black, more of a silky champagne shimmer, a brown, and kind of a brownish berry. It's a nice color story. It works together. You've got a lot of options, but I have found that these two shimmers are really disappointing. They're not bad, and this, by the way, is the new formula. They're not bad, but they're not great. They're not what I want them to be. I have so many other palettes in my collection that are comparable price points with much better shimmers. Udenzai, Glamlight, Beauty Bay, even some ColourPop, way better shimmers within the affordable price point. These two, I feel like they just should be better. Now, Ace Beauté had re-released a bunch of their palettes because their first formula got a lot of bad reviews, and so they reformulated everything. And they actually did a superb job of creating the newly formulated palettes in the same exact color tones. They're virtually identical. They did a great job. However, I think that this palette would be better if the purple shimmers were more impactful. So I love it, but speaking of ColourPop, let's talk about In the Limelight. This is a newer palette in my collection, and I was so excited about this because lime green is one of my favorite eyeshadow colors. So to have a whole lime green palette that was monochromatic with a twist, it's not just lime green everywhere, because we've got this brownish tone, pink, sort of a grungy yellow shade, and then the more white shade up here. So it's not monochromatic, but it is a lot of lime green. So I was very excited about this palette, and overall I would say it's really good quality. My only qualm with this one is that the shades are just not quite as bright as I want them to be. Now that just might be my undertone. This entire video is subjected to my own personal tastes and preferences and life experience. I want this to be a little bit brighter. It's not bad. I know that Angelica Nyqvist voted this palette really quite high, and this might be the first time that I disagree with any of her assessments. Because for me, with my experience, I feel like this shade right here, it doesn't carry enough oomph. I had to dip back into these pans so many times to get the look that I wanted, especially in the mattes. I used a couple of the shimmers and they were really pretty, but the mattes, this matte in particular, it just took so much. It didn't take a lot of work for blending. It blended nicely. It did build nicely upon itself, but I don't want to have to dip back into a pan 10 or 11 times just to get a simple wash of color, and that was the experience I had. At the time of this filming, I'm going to be using this palette again to give it another chance, but right now I'm going to say I love it, but So now let's talk about a Beauty Bay palette. I have 3 Beauty Bay palettes, and overall I really like them. I really like the formula. It's not my absolute favorite, but it's still quite good. I want to talk about the Love Notes palette. I currently have this one listed for sale because I shouldn't have bought it, and I do really like the palette, but I think it could have been done a little bit better. We should have gotten rid of some of these redundant shades. We don't need this many very light toned purples. We don't need this many very light toned pinks, and these two look exactly the same on your skin. So it could have been done smaller. Or if we were going to keep this size, and I understand that they wanted a size that was the same as the Wilderness and the Age of Opulence because this is the same size, that's fine, but I would have brought in some other colors. I'm especially thinking of blue. I think that these purple and pink tones would have worked really well with light toned blues. Nothing crazy, nothing deep like Age of Opulence, no navies or super royal blues, just lighter, more, I don't know, periwinkle, like bluey purples, and maybe a sky blue. I think that if we were to keep this size, it could have been better with some blue shades. Maybe a really light blue shimmer to work with these shimmers here. Like we've got kind of a crystally purple shimmer here, and then a mid-tone purple here. So a blue shimmer, a sky blue, or like a light aqua blue, it would have been really beautiful and still worked with the color story. Now you might say, well, it's supposed to be a pink and purple color story, but it's not, because up here we've got neutrals. This is browns and then a bronze, and then over here we have some deeper berry shades. So they kind of go with pink, but it's not really pink. I don't know. This is a nice palette. If I can sell it, I'll be happy because I don't find that it gets a lot of use in my collection. Overall, it is a good palette, but now I'm going to talk about the Glamlite X Michaela palette. I do like this palette. My only qualm with this one, honestly, it's not even so much of a qualm as simply personal preference. I basically don't use these top 2 rows. When I think about the Michaela palette, I think about all these bright colors on the bottom. It's very purple heavy, but it has a lot of other really bright, pigmented, beautiful tones, and these are the ones that I reach for when I'm even considering grabbing the palette. I think, ooh, I think there's a bright yellow in Michaela, or a bright sky blue in Michaela, or a bubblegum shimmer in Michaela. So when I'm thinking about Michaela, these are the shades that I think about, and I just don't use these 2 top rows. I almost never do neutral. If I do, I tend to grab my ColourPop Limoncello palette because that one just speaks to me more if I'm going to go the more neutral side of things. This row is pretty nice. It's got like corally orange kinds of tones, and then over here there's a bronzy brown shimmer and like a lighter purple shimmer, which is actually quite similar to the shade Princess in Love Notes. But I just don't use these colors. I feel like the top row is almost unnecessary. These 3 right here are super similar. Yeah, they're different tones, but they're similar. And then this one is just a slightly darker version of these, and this shadow here is quite similar to that. Maybe not as brown, but it's got a little more gold in it. But then these 2 also very similar to one another. More gold, more pinky. And then these 2, peach, pink, very close. I don't know. I just feel like instead of having this be so purple heavy, we could have used these top rows to incorporate other colors, maybe to build up the options that are down here and just bring in some more interesting shades. I understand that they probably wanted to cater to people who aren't quite as into colorful eyeshadow, but this is like a really colorful palette. If you're gonna do it, then just go for it. So I love it, but the other ColourPop palette that I've got in today's video is the All Amethyst palette. I am so bummed about this palette. Again, at the time of filming, I've used it once. I plan on using it again to try to have a better experience the second time through. I absolutely love this packaging. I think it is so elegant and beautiful. I love the way that they did this packaging. They actually released several birthstone or gemstone inspired things at the end of 2021 and into 22, but I think that this one is the most pretty packaging out of all of them. Some of them were just kind of drab. Like they had these little quads which were gem inspired, and they were very unexciting. Like the packaging just didn't speak vibrant gemstone. It was kind of, I don't know, it's just not very exciting. Anyway, this is the All Amethyst palette. I really love this color story. Again, a cool tone purple, not monochromatic. We have some purpley tones, some pinks, sort of a greenish that ends up being more purple on the lid, beautiful shimmers. I really love this color story, and I love how the packaging translates onto the inside as well with all these little stars. It's beautifully done. My problem with it is that it's just not great quality. I don't understand the discrepancy in ColourPop quality. They'll release something that's fabulous, and then they'll release something else that's kind of questionable. Like, what's the problem here? Why is there so much disparity between the quality? Everything's done in-house. It's not like they're going off to a company in China to make their shadows. So I don't understand. maybe I'm missing something, but this palette is not what it could have been. If they had created this color story in this packaging with their excellent ColourPop quality, it would be a favorite forever. But I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this one. Most people are saying it's just not quite there. And that disappoints me so much because I love the color story. But I am going to play with it more, and hopefully I will be able to find a way to use it in a way that excites me, but I'm just not quite there yet. So I love it, but... And finally, let's end with BH Cosmetics Lost in Los Angeles palettes. I bought this one as a companion palette because I wanted some pastels to blend out deeper shades. For example, I had the Age of Opulence palette from Beauty Bay, super deep, dark, hyper pigmented shadows, and I wanted lighter tones to work with them so that I didn't look like a raccoon. This palette has a nice range of colors. Everything's pastel toned, but it has a lot of colors. Yellow, orange, peach, brown, blue, pink, murky green, purple, a really good white matte right here, a weird grassy kind of green. There's a silvery blue here. It's very interesting, and I have enjoyed using it as a pastel companion palette for others. But my problem is that, honestly, it was probably my own issue. I should have bought a pastel palette that didn't have any shimmers, but I didn't know that at the time. I wish this palette were all matte, because when I'm blending out deeper colors, they're mattes. If I use a shimmer in my look, it's pretty much, you know, the lid shade or an accent shade or the center of a halo eye or something. I never use a shimmer to blend out something else. So why did I buy an eyeshadow palette as a companion to blend out other colors if half of the palette was shimmers? It was kind of my fault. This is probably some people's favorite palettes if they like lighter toned eyeshadow looks. It's really good quality, and each time I've used this palette by itself, I've actually been pretty surprised by how pigmented it is considering the light tones. It's great quality, but I just do not reach for it anymore. I have so many other palettes in my collection that just have great mattes, and I can use those to blend out something if I want to. I've also advanced in my skill level, so now I use different techniques and stuff, and I just find this palette, it just doesn't get used. And it probably was my fault for buying a palette that wasn't exactly what I needed, but at the time I thought it was what I needed, and it served me well for that time, but no longer. This shadow broke, as you can see. That doesn't have any bearing on the video, so I wish this were all matte, and then it might be staying in my collection. I don't know. I love it, but... And there you go. That is my video on eyeshadow palettes that I love, except for one little thing. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see lots more colorful eyeshadow content. And until I see you again in my next video, I hope you have a lovely day. Bye! Eyeshadow, and I usually upload colorful eyeshadow, and I upload colorful eyeshadow, and I typically upload, but it's not monochrome.